Want to see how I upgraded this old Proto 2000 model? Hi, I'm Dan Cortopassi. Welcome to Model Showcase. In this episode, we're going to take a look at an HO scale Southern Pacific SD9E. According to the Southern Pacific Diesel Locomotive Compendium, Volume 2, SP4314 was built in 1955 as SP5394. In 1965, it was renumbered 3872 as part of SP's system-wide renumbering. The locomotive was rebuilt in 1970 and was renumbered again as 4314. SP's rebuilt locomotives often had an E or an R suffix added to the model designation. I've seen the rebuilt SD9s referred to both ways. I'm going to use SD9E since that's how I've seen it most often. 4314 was retired in December 1994 and was sold to Progress Rail in July 1995. I found photos online of 4314 from 1993 and it still had its location stencil under the cab. My model best represents the engine as it appeared circa 1994. So I have a thing for modeling locomotives that I've photographed myself, and I took pictures of this one in South San Francisco in the 90s. Unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced my photos of this engine. This engine is a Proto 2000 model that I detailed and painted. It's painted and weathered to represent SP 4314 as it appeared in the mid-1990s. At that time, it wasn't that unusual for the road number on the side of the cab to be readable while the lettering on the side of the engine was fading away. I weathered this locomotive using photographs and tried to make it as close to the real thing as I could. The weathering was accomplished mostly with Bragdon self-adhesive weathering powders and also some paint effects. These lighter gray areas under the cab are intentional, and that was present on the real locomotive as well. I think this is where some lettering was patched out at some point. SP often had a home location stencil for a lot of their engines right about here, and I think that's what was there on the real thing. The lettering on this engine is done with microscale decals, and I faded it by airbrushing the paint color over the decals after I'd applied them. This engine is painted with scale coat SP gray on the overall. The ends are also scale coat SP red. I usually prime the engine first, then paint the light color, the red, and then I go ahead and paint the gray. And I actually oversprayed this decal as well with some red, because this was faded on the real engine, kind of flaking off. So I was trying to reproduce that look. So this engine has had its emergency light and oscillating light removed, as was typical in the time period that I'm modeling. The front number boards are still there. Most SP engines didn't have any number boards in the rear. This one also still had its front class lights, so I made those actually work. We'll take a look at that a little later. The plows and the pilots are details west parts. I also did a lot of work on the pilots to make them a little more realistic looking. And it's got Katy scale couplers, and of course all the hoses and everything you'd expect to see. So when I first got this model, the sill was actually damaged. So I ended up cutting it apart, and I used a donor sill from an Atlas SD24, and I took the battery boxes in this upper part from the original Proto shell, and I cut off the battery boxes on the SD24 sill and used the Atlas part down here. So this is kind of a hybrid, but it is actually accurate. It looks just like the real thing. That was a lot of extra work that I wouldn't normally do if I hadn't had one that was damaged. I have a couple other Proto 2000 SD9s I want to build, and they're fine, so I shouldn't have to do that again. The end ladders on this are aftermarket parts from Detail Associates. They're a little bit fussy to put together, but they look really good when they're finished. This is one of those SP engines that had a plow on the rear as well. One thing that I didn't notice until after I'd already painted this once was that the brake recess was in the wrong place. I actually had to cut it out and move it forward about a scale 6 inches. And then I had to, blend it back in and repaint the model in that area. The brake ratchet and other details in the recess are Canon parts that I borrowed from one of their cab kits. The breather pipe is an aftermarket part, and I had to kit bash the emergency fuel cutoff switch because this one had it mounted underneath the sill. So that was something I had to create. So I added a lot of detail parts to the cab, including some photo etched sunshades, some aftermarket armrests, wind deflectors, etc. I also used some aftermarket wipers. I had to scratch build this little part too. This is I think it's some kind of an antenna, but it's on a little tiny stand which was made out of some brass that I folded over. some sheet brass, and then a little cylinder on top. The whip antenna base is a commercial part, but I drilled it out and put a little piece of very fine brass wire. I think it's like 6/1000 for the antenna. Most SP SD9s had this fairing in the back, and this is a commercial casting. I don't remember. It might even be an old Sunrise part. I'm not sure. But and then I had to scratch build the stand for the beacon. This was one of those SD9s that had the beacon mounted like this up on a tall piece of sheet metal. What I thought was kind of cool about this is on the real one, you could actually see the wires going up into the beacon. So I did the same thing, and these are the actual wires that power the light. So this is actually functional. It's a very tiny gauge magnet wire, and there's an LED inside the beacon itself. I used a little bit of dark rust powder on the top of the cab to kind of simulate the rusty roof. These are Canon fans. I replaced the originals with these, and I think they look really nice. The handrails are all custom. I made them out of brass wire and brass stanchions. I added some lift rings on the side, as a lot of SP engines had these welded on. I assume they were welded on anyway, lift rings in different places along the sides of the hood, especially the older engines like SD9s and GP9s. So when I built this locomotive, I put a LokSound Select decoder in it. I'm pretty happy with it, but I may eventually upgrade it to a LokSound 5. I redid all the lighting in this engine with LEDs, and I worked on the number boards to light them up in a better way than the originals. Got the headlight. And I also made the class lights work. I'm not sure if these were really being used in the 90s anymore, but they're on the engine, so I made them work. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this engine, and I still have a couple more Proto 2000 SD9s that I want to build, so I hope they turn out as nice as this one. I think these older models can still be really cool if you put a little work into them. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this model with me. If you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.